provides them with that resource in a power outage. They can see where their water is kept and filtered. It also contained a community kitchen, which could be used not only for entertaining, but also for education purposes, helping teach the residents and the neighborhood at large about healthy cooking, food preparation, nursery beds, basically to get their crops started during the winter, composting facilities for food scraps, and then the community garden that fronts the whole thing with these circular planters, which are supposed to be evocative of grapes. You know, somebody might end up with a square raised bed, but you know, they'd be outcasts. And then fruit trees, as I mentioned earlier, that the entire site was landscaped to be in a type of orchard. The space is really great, not only for just hanging out, but also people meeting while they're doing gardening, community gardening. A great place to hold little farmers markets and food swaps if somebody has excess of one food and they want to trade. And also for education, as I mentioned earlier. We really see this as the Urban Grapevine project as being a place that can help inspire change throughout the rest of the neighborhood and throughout the larger community. And we wanted to create a network of nature, so we tried to make sure that our site plan and our open spaces were connected visually and through circulation to the Marvin Gaye Park and the Watts Branch watershed. We also wanted to be part of building a garden network. So this is the East Capitol Urban Farm that was under construction in October, not about half a mile from our project site. And so we hope to basically work with other community gardens and garden centers to create a network of gardens throughout the area, basically growing food in what is now really a food desert, and building a network throughout the city. So those were our goals in terms of the design of the site and of the units and of the systems. And now I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of our solutions. Part of the problem I think that we have with modern infrastructure, or at least that I have with modern infrastructure, is that people really don't know where their water comes from or where it goes to. They don't have a good perception of water at all, really. It comes out of the tap and it disappears down the sewer, and that's all they know about it. They don't know that it comes from Great Falls, that it gets piped into the city, and then it gets pumped out to Blue Plains to be treated. I believe that we're starting to see a breakdown in the centralized water infrastructures throughout the United States. And I believe this makes a good argument for more decentralization of our water infrastructure. Obviously, Flint is one cautionary tale about what can happen in a centralized water system that's drawing its water from a polluted source. I should back up here. Maybe I won't. Okay, so but obviously the droughts in the West are another issue, in terms of how we're using water, and the fact that we waste so much water now with just leaky old infrastructure, which dumps hundreds of thousands of gallons of potable water into the ground through the leaky pipes. So, in terms of water and the Urban Grapevine project, really water was more than a problem and a resource. It was something which helped define the whole form of the project. We started out with the desired number of residents, and we combined that with a pretty, how shall I say, ambitious budget of 20 gallons per capita per day, which we achieved through low-flow fixtures, through recirculating showers, and composting toilets. Combine that and with the annual rainfall, and you get a number for how much roof area you need per resident, and that came out to be 316 square feet. So multiply that by the number of residents, and you end up with how much roof area you need. And so when we looked at this, we had considered doing the townhomes and things like that too, but when we got right down to it, we realized that at too high a density, there just isn't enough roof space to provide potable water using rainwater for all the residents. And so that drove us towards actually 1- and 2-story units instead of 3- and 4-story units. And in fact, the 1- and 2-story units were more in keeping with the massing and the size of the houses in the area anyway, and were actually listed as being something that was a preference by the community. And so it all sort of worked out. Hot diggity. We believe that water should be transparent. Yes, it's a pun. But this is, what I mean by this is that people should, again, be allowed to see how their water system works, how it's collected, how it's filtered, how it's stored, how it's used. I mean, these are all things that people should understand. And the idea behind Urban Grapevine was to create a way for them to do that in a beautiful and inspiring way rather than something that would depress them. So talking a little bit about the water and waste systems, again, the form of the roofs were butterfly roofs because they're really efficient at collecting water into a relatively small number of point sources, which could then be filtered and piped to the greenhouse for the central storage, pumped into the cistern, filtered through, I'm going to press the buttons again, filtered through a successive set of mechanical filters, and then a UV sterilization transferred to the houses where you'd get sort of a week's worth of water would be processed at a time, and then you'd use it. The gray water was minimally filtered, and then allowed to drain to the root zone, all underground of the trees and other edible and other landscaping really in the project, letting the microbial action in the ground break down any additional nutrients and then providing water to the landscape. Also, the sort of any leachate from the composting toilets, which were 1 per unit, and from the kitchen sink, which is all considered black water, would go through a living machine that was built into the planter. The planter is around each house, and that would then produce gray water that, again, could be used directly for landscaping. The compost from the composting toilets was something we couldn't figure out really how to use on site. Frankly, getting stuff out of your composting toilet and putting it on your vegetables seemed like that still might be a little too radical for most people. And so the idea here was that we would create possibly a new cottage industry about collecting the compost and using it for agricultural purposes off-site, in larger farms, basically recycling our waste through a cow, then you can use that manure to grow food with. And then the food and garden waste would be composted directly on site and used for gardening. So again, we used a microflush composting toilet so that you could have multiple toilets in the same unit draining into something in the basement. And this is just kind of lays out where we saw the living machine planters being used in the site. So challenges and opportunities, affordability, obviously, a decentralized water and waste system is going to cost more than, at least, is not something that we typically do. It's going to need investment. Residents shouldn't be on their own in terms of figuring out how to make these things work. The idea behind decentralized water is to make the system more resilient and more capable for everybody, and so it's something that we should be, as a society, investing in. Code compliance is obviously still an issue. We need new practices and technologies to jive with public health and safety, and we need the code officials to be able to be trained and have some confidence in working with these types of systems. There are also business opportunities in terms of developing these systems, selling them, maintaining them. As I said, the cottage industry in terms of recycling waste for agricultural applications. Moving on now towards net positive energy. We used a program called BEOP from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which is a nice tool to explore different energy options and do a cost-benefit analysis of the different combinations of technologies and materials that we could use in the house for energy purposes. Having done that and progressively, looked at what would cost more money and what would save more energy, we finally arrived at a design that had a